Welcome back to the most professional StarCraft 2 with the former world champion Zerg in the blue, the Italian stallion. It's Reynor. Facing off against the high-tech Protoss in red, we have Classic in a best-of-5 Protoss versus Zerg tournament showdown between one player focused on quantity and the other almost always focused on quality. It'd be awesome before we get started if you could add some quantity and quality by smashing that like button and maybe even subscribe. And Jimmy, what are we at? No cringing. 1,754 likes on this video and this cast, and I'll cast another one. And I'll probably do it anyways, because I don't know what else I can do with my life. But thank you for watching. Hopefully, you've had a good day so far. And hopefully it's about to get just a little bit better than the very first probe escorted away after a thievery of minerals, but the adept will defend it and force the Zerglings back shading forward. Reynor able to get his third hatchery. Jimmy Classic does not start with 2 points. I know. Oh, and the adept disrespectfully moving forward. And gets a drone kill. Really? You can just walk in, kill a drone, and get out, refusing to elaborate further, and not for lack of mouth, but... Well, Classic gets away with murder, at least to start things off, and Reynor's not going to take that lying down, instead building up 10 more Zerglings on the way. Though usually the early Zergling play is shut down relatively easily by the existence of oracles. And having an oracle at all with energy recharge to slap another 50 if you need it every 45 seconds, then taking a third base becomes a little bit easier against a flood of Zerglings. But of course, the oracle can only be in one place at one time, and the Zerglings are very aware of that. Sneaking out around the left side. Oracle swinging in, and the adepts are over on the right, but wow, that's just flying right past the queens. And as the prophecy foretold, yet again, getting like 1 or 2 drone kills and getting out with orange health. And you know what they say, that which doesn't kill you leaves you with a permanent hatred of Zerg and an inability to be repaired because your people lost the ability to figure out how to do that a long time ago, mostly for plot reasons. Meanwhile, 2 adepts shade in. 3 drones dead between the oracles and adepts so far, but another one in the main, and the citizens arrest drones try to take it out. Another one taken down, and 5 kills. 5 kills to start things off, leaving Reynor with a mediocre drone count. Only committed the 2 adepts. The third base was delayed. A whole bunch of gateways are being added on relatively early. Is this charge? He's faking the gas, or so it seems. Yeah, charge and +1. So Classic is taking this gas geyser on the outside just in case any curious overlords come gliding by. We'll eventually get the others, but the focus is on having enough minerals to do a big charge lot. And something a little out of character here for Classic. Maybe looking to catch Reynor off guard. Because like Classic is well known as the guy who rushes a fleet beacon on 4 bases. Okay, that's who he is. And honestly, this, the last year and a half, with the addition of energy recharge, have been quite good for Classic. He got to the World Finals and only lost to Cyril, which pretty much everyone else can say is not a small feat, just getting there in the first place. But, well, this may play off of that predisposition very well. Classic maybe entering his villain arc, or just seeing Hero generally doing absolutely whatever he wants and somehow finding success, including against Reynor on a regular basis. But this is entirely reliant on Reynor having no idea it's coming. And so far, Reynor's building 2 more hatcheries. He's getting 4 gas geysers, a lair, and 6 more drones. Oh my. About to be completely blindsided. Okay, well. He saw the zealots. He saw... You might have been like, well, did he? No. That split-second glimpse. If you and I could see it, Reynor saw it like it was in slow motion. A baneling nest on the way. And immediately Classic is sending the charge lots out. Not that he wouldn't anyways, as all the upgrades were finishing. Reynor had another, like, 5-10 seconds of warning. And that might be enough to get the rounds of Zerglings he needs to not outright die. But without it, it could be an absolute disaster. Well, first Oracle coming in. The charge lot swinging around. just curving around the hatchery with the charges at maximum range. A well-placed spine crawler chopping through some of the lings. Meanwhile, Stasis on the high ground trying to get on top of the queens. Spine crawler adding some damage. So far, Classic not really committing to a fight. Gets into the main base and splits off some zealots, but he's right-clicked on the hatchery. And a lot of the zealots just kind of dying to the queens. Finally working on the drones. Only 2 drones dead so far. Another queen jammed into the corner. Her sacrifice not in vain. And I have to say, the indecisive nature of these zealots flip-flopping back and forth more than a tourist on vacation. He may get the base down the center with the reinforcements, but Reynor already has another hatchery, potentially. The oracles! I think he took out 1 with the queens there. 79 Zerglings dead for 17 zealots, maybe 100. As the +1 zealots kill Zerglings in only 2 swipes, as opposed to 3, which is a massive damage increase. But he doesn't even get the hatch down the center. A real indecisive attack at a Classic. He didn't just send it. He asked in triplicate whether it was time to send it. And by the time he did so, Reynor had enough defenses. I think Classic trying the hero school of Forrest Gumpy and Protoss, but not trying the hero school of not thinking twice before he jumps. Or once, really. I can only say that did not go nearly as well as it could have or probably should have, as he had the zealots even before Reynor was building his first rounds of lings. He will be getting the hatch down the center. Reynor looking to cancel maybe the 4th base. Archons are out now. Classic with 68 probes behind. Nice enough. And the base itself, those +1 melee lings, really kick it in now. We'll be able to take out the Nexus, force a cancel at the last second. The Zerglings will be eviscerated to a ling. Well, this leaves us in a bit of an odd scenario, with Classic still a plenty solid economy. Does he have Storm? Yes. +2 attack, +3 is already started. By no means in a terrible position. He has all the tools he needs in order to do terrible, terrible damage to the Zerg. The same can be said of Reynor against this Protoss army. Looking to engage on the field, he spots the Templar. Reynor knows where the army is. Is he going to base trade with that knowledge? Classic doesn't know this is coming yet. This is Reynor making the decision first. There will be a recall available, but by the time he could potentially use it, it may already be too late for these outlying bases. Classic's gonna go forward, and we'll just have to see how much there is to go back to at the end of things. Banelings rolling in. Reynor trying to muster whatever defenses he can, already splitting off some of the Zerglings, bringing the Hydras back home. He's gonna try to salvage a defense, but there's so many Templar and a whole lot of Storms. Chopping through the base to the north side, the Storms. The Banelings doesn't quite get them. Loses half the Templar, some with Storms before the Storms are able to do enough damage. Hydras, Lings, and Banes scrambling back to defend. The Storms are melting through a lot of the army, but maybe not enough. The Archons rejoining the Banelings find a great connection on the Zealots, and it's just Hydras left behind for now. The bases are gone, with almost all traces of them. Ripped apart by the Zerglings left behind by Reynor, but the supplies are dangerously even. I cannot stress how dangerous Archons are, just in general to the Zerg, especially on a low economy and a limited army. There aren't lurkers, it's just the Hydras. Tries to get the Templar. Beautiful save with the Prism. Optimistic warping. Reynor gonna go for the snipe, and he gets it at the last second. Cancels the warping, sends them back to Ire, wherever they came from, and sends the rest of the units to the units lost tab. Now, Classic gets the money back. The warping is canceled, not destroyed. But he doesn't get the units that were stranded because he didn't have one. Just strayed a little bit too far with the Prism. And now Reynor, at 100 supply, he kept his third base alive. That is massive right now. As Classic desperately tries to rebuild his third, has a couple Storms maybe, keeping his powder dry, but he's really holding on to them. But it's already cost him a bit this game, and thinking he could get the Storms off a little bit later and waiting too long. Catches some of the Hydras. And meanwhile, a Spire for for some mutas in production. And the mutas are usually an awkward choice in this matchup, as Phoenixes hard counter them, and almost every other army composition does a pretty good job on their own. But in this scenario, where the oracles were taken out a while ago, where there's absolutely no scouting, no hope of a sentry hallucination, the economies are in the gutter, and they're barely trying to scrape their way out of it. This is exactly the scenario where mutas could do devastating damage. They're not going to win the game on their own, I don't think. But keeping Classic, the only strength Classic has is his core army, as we've already seen take incredibly cost-effective fights when he's actually allowed to do so. He has +3 attack done. This is just Hydras. The Baneling's a little further behind. Several of the Hydras just going to get cut down by the Zealots. Classic's army is great in a heads-up fight against Hydra Lingbang. But if he has to either go on to the creep, or fight in multiple locations, or chase down mutas, Reynor could very much divide and conquer. Though at the same time, this is over 1,000 gas invested in the mutas. Between the Spire and the mutas themselves, if they don't keep Classic at bay, if he flies into an Archon or two, then it could all evaporate nearly instantaneously. So, but there's absolutely no defense. Classic is long-distance mining because he doesn't have a Nexus, though Reynor's going to help him out with that. The probe count already critically low and dropping. Is Blink done? It is, but the only Stalkers are now being warped in the main. I think one of those not even a super pylon, and the Stalkers barely scratching the mutas. Not the ideal choice by any means. Any attempts at another base, I think, were shut down by Zerglings. And Classic, I mean, none of these units can fly, and I don't think he can afford Phoenixes at this stage. A Lurker Den is on the way for Reynor. Not Hive Tech, but this is one of the few scenarios where I don't think it's needed. Reynor's reopened a massive supply lead, and Classic has been unable to stabilize. The mutas have done exactly what they needed to do. And now the game is very much in doubt for Classic as the Banelings come rolling in. The Storms, not zoning him out of the Nexus. The Probes, he's just letting the Zerglings go to work for the most part. The Probes are slaughtered by Classic's own Storms. 15 Probes dead. The Nexus stripped of shields. The rest of the army, I don't think there's enough. Reynor with a 60 supply lead. The Archon's trying to hold. The Storms have run dry. And the Banelings are rolling through. Reynor has handled this perfectly. Classic tried a cheeky cheese. But Reynor, much better suited. GG. Reynor takes game number 1 in commanding fashion. Wow. I feel like you can see how uncomfortable Classic was with really any sort of cheese. He's stereotyped as like the macro Protoss. And I feel he's trying to play off that stereotype. But he's playing off in not necessarily in a good way. Charge lots are not something you cannot, that they're like a pit bull off the leash. You just gotta send it. And Classic trying to micro charge lots is not, I think cute is the word I want to say and want to use, which seems both offensive and condescending. So accurate then. But Reynor corralling the charge lots and setting up the counterattack and finding the perfect timing to slip in the mutas. And technically the Spire, the mutas themselves not buffed, but the Spire now costs 50 less, and it builds 5 seconds faster, 71 to 66 seconds. So still not quick and easy, but quicker and easier to get to the mutas, I guess, especially in that sort of scenario. And now Classic here on Evil Hearts, one of the shortest rush distance maps, which I've only seen cheese on. And to be fair, like 80% of the games I've seen, which is like 4 out of 5, it's been hero, so Classic does send the probe out to block the base. There are ways as Zerg usually to, obviously a Zerg, what am I saying? That was so dumb. There are ways to get your hatch out in time, but usually it involves skipping the first Overlord. So you may be able to get your hatchery, but it'll cost you several drones earlier. Of course, taking the third base and being vulnerable to Adepts and Oracles, losing 5 drones to Adepts and Oracles also costs you several drones. So That's certainly an interesting cybercore location. I'm not entirely sure. Now, I'm going to give Classic benefit of the doubt. We already established which Protoss player he is not. It gives a lot of credit to Reynor, catching that split-second glimpse of the Zealots. Like, yes, Classic moved out 10 seconds later. That's almost half the build time of a Zergling. Seconds absolutely matter here. That was the difference between Reynor having, like, a second round of Lings by the time the Zealots got there, and it still being in production. That could have been a game-ending attack. For a second, it looked like the probe had just decided to join the Zerg, but you'll never be my real dad. Not sure where that came from. Anyways, the probe gets away with the minerals for now, and a Twilight Council is the choice out of Classic. The Adept, looking for any sort of Ling counterattack. Twilight Council is always cheese. Alright, the reason you ever skip the Stargate is to get deadly damage done early. It is very simply required to get damage. As if you don't go for a Stargate, you're wide open to things like mutas, or just a wide array of counterattacks. It is the aggressive option. Usually, most Protoss builds involve getting a Stargate and then a Twilight Council, and usually you're still able to get away with it. So anything that focuses on the Twilight first is almost certainly cheese. And there's the Adept Glaives. In production. It's an old cheese, certainly, but it checks out. And that's not a wall, right? Vindication! Wow. Thanks, I hate it. Oh, wow. Yikes. The hero school of Protoss who can't build good. You know, maybe Classic decided to start playing StarCraft with his Xbox 360 controller. Just to really get that hero feel. I mean, you look at Hero's recent success. Classic uniquely suited to matches against players like Cyril. Whereas Hero just YOLOing his way throughout his career. And it looks like fun, too. When Hero, like, Classic has this meticulous style, usually, where he has these pinpoint builds that other players find counter timing, so we're playing it like a chess match. But it's time for a little more chess boxing. The Adepts are shading across the map, and one shade brings them halfway there. And so it continues, hitting before the glaives are even done in order to start the damage early. The Roach Warren is not even nearly completed. The Zerglings in production, but the Adepts will slice right through them. Does he complete it? Oh yeah. He's in there. In with the Zerglings, but the Adepts are slicing through. A full shade. The Zerglings cut down by the dozen. The drones are on the run, knowing there's nothing left to defend. Oh no, it's a massacre. Why would you... It's a disaster for Reynor. The Queen assassinated. The drones eviscerated. The Adepts in the third, Adepts in the natural. He's splitting the difference. He's attacking Queens, which is definitely not the ideal choice. 11, 13 drones. Again, I think the only mistake Classic making here is trying to split the difference, but he's going to juggle into the main. Clearly missing an opportunity to get the damage down to the third, but Reynor's had 27 drones. This is critically low levels. He's never going to financially recover from this. If the Warp Prism is taken out, maybe he can restabilize, but it's so bad. What I say? Scouting Immortal. Classic. Okay. Get off my creep! Really? Recalls? Even the Immortal won't die. Meanwhile, the Adepts are still just ransacking the main. It's just endless. Oh no. 2 Adepts. It can't stop. It will not stop. an incredibly well executed adept all-in. Though the supplies remain nearly even. That is misleading. Right now, Reynor, he managed to scrape together a similar amount of workers. In fact, he's up to 48. But Classic has 3 Immortals. They have similar army supply, but look at the army value. 1150, 200 versus 1325, 950. That is Immortals. Those are sentries. And army value is technically counted the queens as well, by the way, who are this sort of nebulous, ambiguous everything for the Zerg. The defense, the economy, and the offense sometimes. But an Immortal Sentry build that Pardon could be proud of if he wasn't such a raging narcissist. Okay, that's not fair. He's just a crazy person, not really a narcissist. Meanwhile, the character assassination is not the only sort of assassination happening today. The force fields come out. The Ravagers will try to break them down. The Queens will tank as much as they can, but they can only do so much. The Adept Glaives, Reynor, barely breaking through some of the Adepts, let alone the Immortals on the back line. The Queens are obliterated. The Lings are eviscerated. The Roaches annihilated. And I'm sure Reynor feeling a bit exasperated here in game number 2. The Sentry 3 Adept hit squad. He's trying to snipe the Prism with the Ravagers. He may even get it. Nope, not even close. GG. Reynor taps out and Classic strikes back. We're all tied up. 1-1. Well, a bit better execution there, shoring things up after the kind of floundering charge lot timing. Instead, going for the Classic Adept Glaives. And Reynor just not ready? It's such a hard line to walk, especially on a short rush distance map. Having too many units early versus not having enough drones. Because if they don't actually commit and you build a bunch of units, you might not be able to counterattack. And then you're just behind anyway. So, well, we see. In a much, much different... Thank you. Thank you. You see the indicator. Somebody send this to Hero. You know, don't send it to Hero. He's just going to keep spiting. Celestial Enclave. I think it's very unlikely we'll see anything of the sort this time on a map with a pocket base at the back and a worker-only path. This is your 3-base map. It's always been one of the toughest lines to walk as Zerg. Of too many drones versus too few. Just in general. That's pretty much Zerg in its entirety. But specifically against Adepts. Because it's very hard to tell early on whether it's an all-in or if it's just, you know, the shady bunch where they have 5 or 6. If you see the Warp Prism, that's a giveaway. The Probe getting in, gonna flirt with the minerals to try to bounce the drones around on the mining. Reynor using the Gather key in order to try to counteract it. Who are you trying to show off to, Reynor? Alright. So if you just hold down the Gather key, it pretty much at whatever the repeat rate of your keyboard is. I'm amused at the anecdote. I think it was Roddy talking about, like, at some point they were staying in the same team house or something and trying to use Reynor's keyboard. The repeat rate on his keyboard, so pretty much the rate at which the more keys come out after typing the first one, like G and then the second G. He had it set to whatever the factory, like in the Windows registry, not even like the interface, but the registry. His keyboard, you cannot type on it. You just cannot, because there is no, when you tap one key, it's essentially, unless you're literally just, it is going to do multiple, which is part of how Reynor's APM is so high and how he's building so many units and whipping out so many corrosive biles and doing so much. But it can backfire quickly if you're not used to it. All right. Like a lightsaber sort of situation. I don't know why I went with lightsaber and not like F1 car. We were talking about Roddy, so... If you can't handle it... Not that I think Reynor's typing out many emails or something, but essentially unusable for typing. but very usable, obviously, for StarCraft. Anyways, that's part of what he's doing with the anti-mining micro there. I just found an opportunity to use that anecdote. Void Ray. In this economy? Like and subscribe so we can all afford Void Rays next year. If you like and subscribe right now, Santa will bring you a Void Ray. Or bring your greatest enemy a Void Ray. Like, and you can use it against him. Anyways, don't think too hard, just do. And hype press the hype button, which I still haven't figured out what the point of it is. I keep seeing it on the analytics, and I don't really, you guys have phones. I think it's only on your phone. I don't watch YouTube on my phone. Because I'm a millennial. I read, all right? Believe it or not. I learned how to read recently, and then I saw the comments. I'm like, oh, this was a mistake. No, but I got a Kindle. And then I cast. Then I play. All right, and that's enough of my biography for the next year. Thank you. Tune in for the next episode. Oracle. The drone! He used the worker skin. Stop! No, sir! Sir, this is a Wendy's. Oracle comes in, gets 4 kills. The probe. I love this. I love how Reynor used this, though. At this stage of the game. Oh, no. Wait, are there Whoopies down there? Ah! So, 5th kill. Oh, he's working... That is a crazy... He's actually hitting the rocks. It's just... The animation is going through the... What the hell? That's... He is hitting the rocks, right? Yes. A lot of odd stuff going on, but... At the... One thing that's not going on is super early game cheese. Classic has hard-walled. This is the classic. This is the classic here. 3 bases, even though the back base only has 1 gas gasser. Templar Archives, Blink +1. He's only moved out with his first Oracle, and he's hardwalled as natural. I think he's just going to expand to the 4th here. Meanwhile, Reynor working on his 4th base. We got a full-on macro game. Storm's on the way, yeah. Getting everything. This is what I expected going in. We finally got there, but Hydra is done out of Reynor. And 2 more. He's just... Now, Classic's intent is to just survive. All right, objective, survive. He knows there's likely going to be some sort of timing, but he just wants to build. I wouldn't be surprised to see the fleet beacon. Meanwhile, infestation pit out of Reynor already. Robotics facility is on the way. Even building cannons at the natural. Complete full turtle. It's like he's trying to make up for the last 2 games with the most turtley possible strat. A 2nd Stargate. Okay, let's see it. Classic. We know what you want. Show me what you want. What you really, really want. It's a fleet beacon, by the way. He's getting a 2nd Stargate before a fleet beacon, which is an odd choice. Usually the mothership is the priority. Meanwhile, the Oracle... That's a rich Vespine base. Wow. Fleet beacon is on the way. As Classic climbs the tech tree as quickly as possible. Reynor on the... Oh my. Sir Richard and his band of Swarm Host brethren. And you know what? The moment I saw it, I realized he was making Swarm Hosts, which, you know, with my eyes. But it actually makes a lot of sense. Classic, especially on this sort of map, Classic is fully dependent on turtling with Templar and cannons. And you know what can exploit that for even more efficiency? One, the creep is on his doorstep. Literally right up against the base, climbing the ramp. Classic, I don't think Classic has factored this in. Classic is going carriers. Carriers versus Swarm Hosts. Now, obviously, Swarm Hosts do not have an anti-air capability. But Hydras do, and if you can take out the Templar, or at least whittle them down, and that's what he's trying to do with the Lings. He gets right up. The hard wall works both ways, and the Locusts are unleashed. The Storm doesn't do quite as much damage per second, though it has a larger radius. He's going to exhaust the Storms and work his way through. The Hydras will be eviscerated, or evaporated on the ramp. Not eviscerated. You don't get eviscerated by psionic energy, at least in this episode, I guess. Gotta be accurate here with your adjectives. There are only so many words, okay? But people say I have some of the best ones. And I'm also modest and humble. People, and the very smart people in the comments tell me that. I know because they're in the comments. Thank you. You're breathtaking. Like and subscribe. The carriers have arrived. The first wave of Locusts finding some success, but not overwhelmingly so, but the Storm's gonna ward away even more. The Hydras and Lings trying to take full advantage. The ramp is being held, but the Locusts starting to overwhelm. The Templar count dwindling. Only 1 or 2 remain. The cannons being torn asunder. And the very temporary Locusts are taking the brunt of the damage. Warp Prism knocked out of the sky. Energy recharge for another Storm. The carriers have arrived. Just 2 of them for now. That may be enough to drive this all back. Is there an observer? Yes, he can actually take this down. He's gonna fight with the Hydras. But there's only so many interceptors. 15 Hydras at a time. And behind this, Reynor has 82 drones. Classic's Turtley Strat is being picked apart by the Locusts. Overwhelmed. The Storms have to be used. And the Locusts recharge before Storm does. He drops down on top of everything. And it might be too much. The Hydras are just fighting the interceptors, which isn't ideal, but the base itself. The probes are under attack. The carriers are out of interceptors. The Hydras taking out the... They're just hot air balloons at this point. Knocks down... almost gets one. But the charge lots. Able to hold for now. 18 more Hydras in production. But Classic, he needs to change the equation soon. Or Reynor, on the other hand, is going to solve the Protoss problem permanently. 4 carriers, but 17 more Hydras, and here come the Swarm Hosts untouched throughout all this. Honestly, a genius move from Reynor, who struggled against this style of Protoss over the last few months. And partially, this map extra suited to the turtley carrier play. But I think Reynor's had this in his pocket for a little while now. And he whips it out to great effect. The 4th base is down. The carrier's usually a strong choice against just Hydras, but Tempest may have suited him better. Knocks down 1. He doesn't have the economy. Gets another. The Storms can be devastating, but Reynor can rebuild again and again and again. Another Warp Prism attempted. Not sure what the Warp Prisms are even trying to do here. The Hydra's thinned out, but the Swarm Hosts will not stop. Classic must stop them first, and so far has been entirely unable to do so. Another wave, and this may be the very last one. The Hydras continue pincushioning the carriers with absolutely no... Gets the pylon powering everything, and GG! Reynor breaks out the Swarm Host, breaks down the cannons, breaks the wall, and breaks Classic to go to match point. What a play. Move over Shakespeare. Reynor seems to have solved, at least on that map, the full turtle Protoss that... Now, a lot of the time, getting to Swarm Hosts is a bit more difficult because the Protoss will move out with Blink Stalkers to put on some pressure. Classic, fully committed. Like, he seems to be all over the place. Roller coaster Protoss right now. Goes for double cheese, and then follows it up with full turtle. But Reynor came prepared. And honestly, I think that's what Reynor was looking to deal with throughout this series. It's just Classic has switched it up a bit. Hey, He's like, no, I was playing 2 standard. Back to the hero school of Protoss. Build everything in random locations. And honestly, remember on Evil Heart with that abomination of a Wallen? Also, the only game he's won so far. Correlation, causation. Normalization. But not even sending the probe out, just this wall off, we'll call it a strategy. Meanwhile, Reynor, happy enough to take his natchery, I'm sure. I would have said, at least before the first couple games, that Classic is probably one of the best Protoss to just copy-paste. Because there's no way, there's no recreating the eclectic genius of Hero. I don't even think Hero can recreate it. He just comes up with something similar through his small learning model. But Classic, Cure, and Cyril are, well, if Cyril was playing in anything nowadays, unfortunately. I guess probably Solar would be a better template than Reynor. But if you're one of the 4 people watching this who's playing the latter on a regular basis, those are the players I think are most realistic to copy, at least from the ones who show up here because they're in the top 10 usually. But Cyril or Solar. Solar, of course, Cyril's greatest stunt double. Classic and Cure. The macro players, who still mix in some cheese, obviously, but they have a pretty clear grasp of what they want to accomplish and how, and are so solid at it. And it's not flashy, usually, but it's clearly effective. Now the players you don't want to copy, Clem, Hero, Reynor. Players who get away with their strategies, both because they're them. Okay? Trying to keep up or even reason out why it works. The Protoss can heal. Here on Persephone, maybe one of our last times seeing this map, but as the tournaments coming up through December and beyond will likely be phasing out of the map pool as it's no longer on the ladder. The adepts. Hey, you can't be in here! They just walk, see? Get off my creep! Brenda, I'm starting to feel like you have a lot of pent-up anger issues. What the fuck are you talking about? Whoa, 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 whoa! Whoa, Brenda. No, they'll just censor it. I didn't mean that. I think you did. Well, I did, but I didn't mean to say it out loud. I was just thinking it. Is that Protoss? I'm sorry. No, not... Sorry, I am blacked out for a moment. Twilight Council. But after the Stargate, we got the Evolution Chamber on the way for Reynor, leaning into the Zerglings yet again, more than likely. Double Oracle looking for its opportunity, trying to find a revelation. Robo on the way already. Quite a quick Robo. Meanwhile, wow. Wow. And charge starts. Did he get a forge? No? Catches a queen, but Oracle's... Whoa! Spore Crow not quite in range. The edge of the map there over the beautiful river. What are you doing? I don't know. Classic with some interesting maneuvers here. Trying to... well... Oracle, matter of principle. One drone on mandated work break now. Well, third base is done. Bit of a haphazard start here for Classic, but he is going for the charge yet again. No +1. Just mass charge lots. And he has the gases at his natural, but I don't think... Well, he's not mining from them, so I'm not sure if he was just trying to sell it to any overlords that were nearby. But at this stage, is there a warp prism? It's already done, and it's heading out. Reynor, I think he spotted the Zergling. So he's able to evade it for now, but a whole bunch more Zerglings in production. Zerglings, not the ideal counter to charge lots. I mean, with +1, eventually they could be enough, and we'll see if Classic learned his lesson about how decisive you need to be with the charge lot timings. Meanwhile, headed towards the natural. A clutch of them looking to slice through. Meanwhile, in the main base, there's enough time for a warp-in. The Queen's not able to close the distance. Zerglings being cut down one by one. Melee attacks about to complete, just trickling in the charge lots, but the Queens are overrun. The charge lot's able to cut them down. And so far, he might even be able to hold the ramp. Goes for the drones at the natural, some adepts at the third. And the Zerglings may be able to clean this up eventually, but the spawning pool creating a wall off here awkwardly. And here come the oracles with stasis as well. Anything that cuts into the Zergling count could be devastating for Reynor. He only has 54 drones and dropping now. A little optimistic with the oracles. Looks like eventually this gets cleaned up. Infestation pit is on the way. I'm not sure if Reynor again was angling towards the Swarm Host, but certainly not gonna have time for it this time around. Oracle gets picked off, but the Zealot's still chopping through. 59 drones back at home against just 55 drones out of Reynor. And, well, Classic ends up losing more resources. But Reynor's economy is quite mediocre. He goes straight for a hive and a baneling nest. This could be an ultralisk play. Even though there is a robotics facility, there's almost no way that Classic's going to be pumping out Immortals against someone who's going mass charge. Or I mean, mass Zergling, rather. Now, of course, Reynor needs to survive to get that hive in order to get anything done. Another key point, Classic has no forge at all. So no upgrades. Just reliant on the Zealots themselves, but as the Zerglings get better and better upgrades, it's becoming harder to see them finding success, though the Archons are helping out dramatically. The Queen, no! Gets taken down, and the Spore Crawlers are trying as well, but just taking out the spores before they can do anything. Oh, it might finish. It's gonna be close. No! One more hit! And the Queens knocks it out, but the Archon surrounded. Now this is... The Archon eventually gets taken down, but Classic just keeps trading Zealots for Zerglings. So far, 56 Zealots for 144 Zerglings. Adrenal Glands on the way. Reynor with 59 drones. He cleans all of it up, and there's the Ultralisk Cavern. Against an almost certainly immortal-less Protoss, and having 4 bases, but... Well, Classic... The saving grace is the economy, but the lack of upgrades is pretty devastating at this stage. He's going to be up against 2-1 Zerglings, and I think technically Banelings, though no Baneling speed. Meanwhile, the Archons juggled to try to save the base. I don't think he's going to. No cancel. Classic a little late on the draw. And just gonna send it. He's got 4 Archons. Storm is on the way, though. I don't think he has any Templar that aren't happily merged into Archons now. He's just gonna go. This is it. Do or die. The Archons are an existential threat. The Queens are mustering. Reynor knows. Some Banelings on the way. But the Archons are the threat. And the Queen's taking a lot of damage. The Banelings try to trickle through. But the Zerglings thinning out quickly. The Queen's not in a position to prevent any further warp-ins. They'll try anyways. A lot of damage on the Warp Prism. So close. But upgrades don't matter when the Archons have such overwhelming power. A singular G. Reynor clearly not happy with that outcome. So close yet so far. I don't think stopping the Warp Prism would have necessarily stopped the attack. But you need more than Lings and Banes to deal with really anything more than 1 or 2 Archons. And he just didn't have it. The Ultra halfway done. And Reynor now only 1 game away from letting this one slip. Classic strikes back with a much more decisive charge lot timing. He never got a Forge. 0-0 upgrades at the end of the game. Whereas Reynor had Adrenal Glands, 2-1 with 2-2 nearly done, and a Hive. It just didn't pay off in time. Classic showing kind of a new school of Protoss here. But, is it enough to carry him through? Game 5, Tokamak. Again, one of our last opportunities to see these maps. And, you know, well loved. But we're ready for something new, I think. Game 5. This from the Revival Star Lake Season 3, which has had some of the most epic series on the new patch of StarCraft 2, which beginning of October, which does seem to have brought the game a little bit closer to parity, at least between, not parity, though in some ways, especially if you read the comments, but make sure to like and subscribe to learn how to read. Actually, they just have a thumbs up, so you don't know. You don't need to know. Just look for that. Or that. It doesn't really matter either way. In fact, it's sometimes better to get dislikes, because controversy generates interest. That could never go wrong, right? Like, that sort of self-cannibalizing algorithm rage bait. What could go wrong? Why would Elgor do this? So, quite a topsy-turvy series so far. Classic. Finding mixed success with the charge lots. Archons, as always. You can't every time you can't have a discussion about Storm with all words, you know, just sometimes you want to say many words when few words would do. Are you good? What is that probe doing? Hey, classic! I was about to complain about Archons, but looks like Classic's gonna proxy a Starcade, but every discussion about spellcasters or balance or storm or even ghosts and all that, like factoring very simply, Templar can become Archons. So their job doesn't begin and end with storm. But instead you have the option, and yes, there's some extra steps, it's a whole process. But the Archon is one of the strongest units against Zerg. It is expensive, doesn't work in every scenario, but you're never gonna complain. You're like, now I just have these Archons. Zerg doesn't have EMP, and it's quite an effort to get things like Lurkers or Broodlords, which are the most direct counters. So, if only my Infestors could merge into a Defiler. It's Zerg bias. Yeah. I'm sick of watching Serral get the Infestor nerfed over and over while mine die before I remembered I had them. Get good. Yes, I do pick Protoss. Now stop! Oracle on the way. Now, the entire intent is that Zerg players have the Spore Crawler timings mapped out. I expect Reynor will have a Spore Crawler a third of the way done by the time this Oracle comes in, which is exactly what he's trying to do. Alright. Oracle's already on the way. In fact, well, Reynor actually too... Did he see it? Or is this just a react? 4 kills. And the Oracle doing its job here. Slicing through 7 drones. 8. It's a disaster. And Reynor figures it out immediately. He knows exactly what happened. Unfortunately, he doesn't get there before the second Oracle comes out. But this is critical damage. Reynor down to 30 drones. Almost as the game starts. A second Oracle comes in. There's no Spore at the Natchery. This one's not going to get nearly as much done, but keeping control of the drone count, he will lose the Stargate as, you know, well, when you put it out on the map like that. Reynor figured it out literally the second it happened. But the Oracle's a resounding success. Englaved Adepts yet again. We'll see if Reynor can figure it out in time. A bold move, but Reynor's going to have to toe that ever thin line between too much and too few in the drone count. Wow, this is, well, like watching a drunken dance there of the Oracles trying to get that creep tumor. Neither one able to maneuver in time. A Roach Horn on the way, Reynor bouncing back in the drone count. The Oracle is still trying to find some sort of damage. I think they've already done what they needed to, and really needs to not lose. Oh, whoa, 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 whoa! This is restricted lair space by order of the Hatchery Owners Association. My name is Brenda, and with all due respect, you can go... Brenda? You can go, away. Better. Didn't feel like it had the impact, though. Doesn't need to. Sorry, I, liked it. Reynor with Roaches on the way. More Zerglings in production. That is a lot of Adepts with Glaives, but he completes the Shade, trying to minimize the surface area. The Queen's adding some damage. And I think Reynor may have enough. He actually hard-walled himself. Has to be careful. He's got to get rid of that Evo Chamber. More Adepts coming in. Cut off some of the reinforcements, which is hurting. Rebuilds it. The wall off, very important here. Gonna complete the Shade, try to kill some more drones. And will successfully do so. So this is where the lack of Stargate becomes very important. Reynor will lose a significant amount of drones, but there's only one Oracle, which means a counterattack is very much a possibility. Though Reynor feeling comfortable enough, I don't think that did the damage it needed to do to justify that expenditure of Adepts. Classic has lost 2,500 to just 1,600 resources. He's lost an Oracle and 14 Adepts for 18 drones and 28 lings. Reynor's got his 4th base on the way. We've got Groovy Spines and +1 ranged attack. Hydralisk range. The fact he's getting Hydra range first really indicates he wants to focus more defensively. Almost always, if you're going to go for a timing attack, you'll get speed just to get across the map in a timely fashion. But the Infestation Pit, once again joining production, we have to ask ourselves again about those Swarm Hosts. Though, that did seem to be very specifically to deal with the turtle style. The sit-back 4-base carrier sort of style that Classic usually loves, but has only attempted once in this series. Classic is really spooling up to defend against the counterattack, but Reynor did not oblige. He's just sitting back. And Classic now feels obligated to move out. There's a War Prism on the way, which almost always indicates the conduit to attack. Some Adepts trying to sneak by. But Reynor has the army he needs to deal with this, I think. This is mostly sentries. The Tickle Beam's not going to be enough against Hydras with range and +1. This could backfire horribly. There's enough Ravagers to break down most of the force fields. Okay, there's just 3, but... Got one Queen getting some special attention. A lot of Adepts out in front. The Roaches and Hydras will be spotted. There is no 4th base for Classic. The force field's coming out. Corrosive Bile, but the Hydra's just firing over the top. The sentries, not known. I know the force fields everywhere. Boxing out a lot of this. Classic trying to isolate parts of the fight. Stasis to cut off the counters. Adepts finding some success. Meanwhile, cutting off the base itself. The biomass of Adepts zoning out. The Warp Prism, a very important piece of this puzzle. Corrosive Bile scattered through. War Prism. But the Hydras aren't in position to deal with it. The Queen's not high enough number. And the force fields are starting to run dry, but the hatchery is vulnerable. Classic starting to break through, but the Hydra count is still high enough to force him to keep him at bay. The Adepts, not bad against the Hydras on their own, but the Roaches are out in front. +1 is done. He needs that warp in, and he needs to be able to save. He lights up the Oracle as well. The Spore Crawler will help out. Classic starting to bleed out dramatically and loses almost everything by the end. The Sentries are popped by the Roaches and Hydras. The Adepts are cut down. The Immortals are saved, but they will be the only ones. A Templar Archives is on the way, but Reynor did not lose his 4th base. He kept many of his Hydras alive, and he now has... Did he get a hive? Yes. Oh, no. It's a disaster for Classic. A lot closer to breaking through than I thought he would be, but not close enough than he'd like to be, at the very least. Getting the 4th base was kind of maybe the best case scenario there, and he didn't get it. It cost him all of his sentries. Over 1,000 gas. He lost 12 sentries, both oracles. And they're not going to be rebuilt easily. And he doesn't have a Stargate, so no easy counter to things like lurkers. If he loses the Prism, then there's nothing stopping Reynor from just counter-attacking across the map to deadly effect. 6 lurkers on the way. Well, the Immortals, 4 Immortals. He's got the Templar, but he doesn't have Storm done. He's got it on the high ground. The 4th base, the Zerglings will cut through a cannon, and here comes Reynor. He's got a 50 army supply lead. Classic needs those storms. +1 attack for either side, ranged attack, but the queer bait and switch comes in with the Zerglings on the right, burrows down the lurkers on the left, and there's no to tell. Oh no, it's a disaster. Oh no, he's walking right into the lurkers. He takes so much damage trying to do a counterattack, but it costs him already a massive chunk of the army. A few Adept shading through, might be able to get a couple, but the damage is already done. The 4th base sliced apart by the lurkers, trying to catch the army out on the field. Storms yet again. The Immortals held at bay. The Hydras. The Zerglings. Reynor with almost an insurmountable advantage. Classic again tried that timing attack, but Reynor adapted. And he's not too far from overcoming. A single storm. The Templar will suffer for it, but forces the army back. On either side, the reinforcements coming through, and the Templar getting close enough. Might be forced back a little bit further. No Archons with this, trying to use the storms, but the Hydras get on top. The Immortals no longer living up to their name. The Templar non-existent. The Lurkers in position, and in 5, Reynor claims GG. A decisive victory to cap it off in a quite a topsy-turvy series. Reynor with a vengeance. I could detect a little bit of spite at that, especially after losing to the haphazard Archon charge lot timing in the previous game with a single G. Now, you can blame the keyboard all you like, but you know Reynor was a little salty at that. So, being able to hold on and break through. I'm not sure what Classic was attempting, but it was something a bit different. He got completely shut down in his one attempt at the Classic style of 4-base carrier. So, a different... It was close, but not close enough. So, hopefully you enjoyed as much as I did. And if you got the means and motivation, it'd be awesome to check out Patreon or YouTube membership. But, here, liking and subscribing and hyping are still free, at least for now. So, thank you to our Mule Tier patrons for bringing in the extra minerals. Big Jiggy, Devin, Door, Kate, Mario, Soup. Glad you still enjoy. And thank you to the RSL for another amazing season. Look forward to the final season of the year with an offline finals in December. And all the highlights here, of course. You can find more info in the description or just RSL SC2. Either way, thank you for watching. I hope I made your day just a little bit better. Make sure to check out this video that Jimmy picked out for you. Just for you. All right? Don't disrespect. Good luck, have fun. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. Stay chill.